So in this video I want to talk about long the US dollar against the Canadian dollar. Um, so I've just pulled up the US dollar ETF, which kind of indicates that the US dollar has been performing weakly. However, the US dollar against the Canadian dollar has actually been looking quite strong. So that piques my interest because there's that divergence. From a long-term perspective, this has actually been in a uptrend since 2011, and right now it's actually kind of seeing a bit of resistance, and it's kind of shot back up right now. So probably would be saying it's too early for it to be shooting all the way back up, but I think there's potential for that given how strongly the US dollar has been acting against Canadian dollar. So just for an example, let's have a look at well, let's talk about that later. I'll just quickly run through what else is going on with this trade. Essentially, the source for this trade was just browsing through charts for my kind of market update. I saw this kind of bullish action despite the US dollar weakness that's been going on recently, as you can see from the US dollar ETF. Also, my system can do with a little bit more risk. Without the US dollar Canadian on, I've got about 10.1% there. And actually putting on the trade will bring that up a little bit to 11.86%, utilizing about 80% of my portfolio. I think this is a pretty good trade in that sense. Now, because this is long the US dollar and short the Canadian dollar, it actually adds a bit of diversification to the portfolio. I don't have a lot of long US dollar exposure. As I've mentioned, the technical trend long-term wise has been up since 2011 and sideways since 2015. Now, intermarket wise, we've got a bit of risk on with the stock market, risk off with safe haven currencies, which kind of hopefully would provide a bit of a boost to this as well. Precious metals have looking like they're rebounding a bit. US dollar has been fairly weak, I would say. So looking at the US dollar against the euro, it's actually showing a bit of strength against the euro. Against the Swiss franc, bit of weakness today. Let's say against the pound, it's shown a fair bit of strength, but it hasn't made new lows or new highs against the pound. Against the Australian dollar, once again, there hasn't really been new lows, or because the Australian dollar's the first currency in this case, it's inverted. So we haven't actually seen the US dollar strengthen to areas it has not strengthened to recently. So I think really the Canadian dollar has shown quite a lot of strength against the US dollar. It's actually been going up as I've been talking about it. If we look at the Canadian dollar against other currencies, you'd expect this to be so the Australian dollar's acted quite strongly against the Canadian dollar. So what about against the euro? How is the Canadian dollar performing? Quite weakly. Against the Swiss franc. Quite weakly. Against the yen. Quite weakly. So you can kind of see that the Canadian dollar's been not doing too well against other currencies as well. Oh, even against the pound it's not doing that great. So that to me kind of signals weakness in the Canadian dollar, which is exactly what you want. It's gone to new highs. Well, hasn't reached new highs yet, but it looks very much so like it will. So I think that's a decent bet. I think there's a 10% chance that it'll go to 1.45. 15% chance it'll go to 1.4. 20% chance it'll go to 1.38. 30% chance it's just going to go sideways. 25% chance it's going to go to 1.3. So that's where I'll put my stop loss. Price moves up, I'll hold it. Price moves down, I'll leg out of a third of it. I think my psychology has been fairly confident, and essentially this is the plan of what I'm going to do with the US dollar Canadian. Hopefully get in around 1.33, stop loss at 1.3, profit target 1.45, risking a total of 1.6% of my capital, return on risk of 4. That's really the idea behind it all, and we'll see how it all goes.